Black and White was advertised to be one of the most ambitious games of all time. Coming from the mind of the polarizing Peter Molyneux, it was released in 2001 to critical acclaim and won several awards. While it was mainly praised for its originality and charm, many criticized some of the game's controls and countless bugs. It also suffered from a lack of replay value, although this was supplemented a bit by the multiplayer and the modding community. In summary, Black and White was a god game where you play as a god and go through various challenges alongside your creature. Whether you were a benevolent god or one who routinely smited its villagers was up to you to decide. If I had to give you my thoughts quickly, it is still a fun game to play, although there are many elements that haven't aged very well. Creature training is also way too time consuming and takes away from other elements such as pleasing your villagers and completing objectives. Fast forward to 2005 and the much anticipated sequel was released with less positive acclaim compared to its predecessor. Afterwards, a lone expansion called Battle of the Gods was released in 2006 and nothing else came of the series. Lionhead Studios began being regulated to making Fable games for the rest of its existence until its dissolution in 2016. Molyneux himself left in 2012 to form 22 Can Studios, which has focused more on mobile gaming. It's quite sad, honestly, that this once promising series kinda just ended before its third title. Was this just not good enough to demand a third game, or did the gaming industry just go in a completely different direction? Also, as a heads up, I am recording this game on my XP machine. Both the first and second game are notoriously difficult to run on modern systems. Although there is an unofficial patch out there, I still ran into many issues when playing on Windows 10. There's also no digital re-release of either the first or second, making obtaining a copy much harder because of it. Digital re-releases of games tend to bring new light and attention to many forgotten titles, but unfortunately that may not be possible due to all the licensing issues. To make a long story short, let's just dive right in. So when you begin the game, you're given a pretty decent cutscene of what is currently going on. You are a god waking up from your slumber into nothingness and are brought back to the world of Eden. The good and bad conscience of the first game return with the same voice actors reprising their roles. They not only serve as advice givers for certain situations, but also serve to introduce the player to various features throughout the game. I've always liked this duo, and the dichotomy between the two is an interesting one. You're then brought to a section of the first map where you must make your choice on which creature will be yours. You have 4 choices: the ape, the lion, the wolf, and the cow. There's also a tiger that can appear, but I for the life of me can't get it to appear for some reason. I've wanted to choose the tiger since that was my creature in the first game, but I decided to go with the next best thing, which is the lion. Unlike the first game, there are no unlockable creatures, which is a bit of a bummer in my opinion. The first game featured 8 unlockable creatures as well as 4 additional creatures that can be patched in and used right away. The expansion pack for Black and White 2 brings the total playable creature count to 6 with the addition of the tiger and the tortoise, but that is such a far cry from the possibilities of the first. We will get more into how creatures work once we get to the third land. For now, we will stay on Tutorial Island and learn the basic controls. Compared to the first, controlling the camera is a lot easier and feels much smoother as a result. It's much easier to change angles and get the right pitch, which is much appreciated here. Similar to the first game, the arrow keys can also be used to move the camera around. Some people have complained about having the hand that controls the camera be a bit cumbersome, but I personally have had no issues with it. What I've always had an issue with, however, is the throwing mechanic. Being that you are a god in this world, you are able to interact with the physical realm with the left mouse button. This allows you to pick up many things with very little effort. There are, however, many side quests that require you to throw an object to a certain location. It seems simple enough with you moving the object with the mouse and letting go of the left mouse button. The problem comes in how precise you'll need to be with your movements. Move too fast and you'll throw it too low. Move too abruptly and the trajectory is way too high. Regardless of how much I've practiced with this, I could never get fully comfortable. But that is just the first of our issues. After leaving Tutorial Island, we are brought to the second land where our people are under attack by Aztec forces. These will serve as the big bad of the game and what we will ultimately go up against by the end of the game. For now though, there's very little we can do to stop the Aztec army. The goals here involve grabbing some villagers to safety and doing damage as much as we can to the invaders. Afterwards, we are brought to the third land, which now begins the tutorial on town, army, and creature management. Considering that there are 9 lands in the game, it's an interesting design choice to have lands 1 and 3 serve as tutorial islands, while the second land being more of a cinematic one. Regardless, it's time to learn more about the core features of Black and White 2. For city management, it is pretty straightforward. There are 3 resources to collect: food, wood, and the new resource ore. A steady food supply is one of the first priorities to have in any settlement, as running out of it will pose serious issues. This can be done by placing farms and assigning your villagers to manage the fields. This will then make them into disciple farmers, which then makes them farm forever unless you assign them to something else. Villagers that are not assigned will do what they feel is best for the situation currently. While fields can be built automatically without any assistance, other buildings will need builders to construct them. You can either pick the building to construct from the toolbar or choose the one that is suggested to you by your villagers. Once you place the building, villagers and your creature can be assigned to help with the construction. Similar to the first game, both wood and ore will need to be at the site for construction to begin properly. New to Black and White 2 is the ability to God build, which means you directly build the building with the resources currently in your hand. This can be an effective way to construct buildings, but it also costs more resources than the traditional method. I usually just stick with the first to watch my villagers grow my settlements as well as my creature. I will say there is such a joy in watching your cities start from small little tribal villages to sprawling metropolises. It also helps that the game looks freaking amazing, especially for the time. It's a huge step up in presentation values from the first game. The lighting especially is very well done. Seeing the lamps and torches litter the road at night is just a gorgeous sight to behold. Very well done on the visual front here. One thing to keep note of is the green ring around your settlement. This is known as your influence ring, and you won't be able to do too much once your hand reaches outside of the ring. Sometimes you'll get a second or two to maybe grab a tree or a rock from outside, but the time allotted to do that is very short. It's even shorter than the first game, which gave you more of a buffer before you needed to return to your ring of influence. I wish there was a meter of some kind so you know how long you can be out there and still grab something. The enemies have a ring of influence as well, but it isn't something to worry about too much in the main game. From completing the tutorials and side quests on the lands will give you tribute points to spend on various upgrades. Spending tribute can unlock new buildings, miracles for you and your creature to use, and even some other miscellaneous features. Tribute is especially important if you want to go to the impressive route, as new buildings will be needed to increase impressiveness. Constructing the same kind of building will result in less impressiveness each time. So there are two ways to win each land, and that is through impressing other settlements by building your own, or through military means. Impressing a village will make the settlers abandon their own and flock to your city. If you want to go the military route, you will first need to build a barracks. Once the barracks is built, you can then place a platoon flag and determine its size. The males of your village will flock to the banner and join the army. Once that occurs, you can send them to attack enemy platoons or head straight to other villages to capture. Once those settlements are captured, you can now manage them and begin fixing their problems. As expected, your creature can also help out with the fighting and make it far more entertaining to watch. The system here is pretty simple, although it is adequate enough if you want to rule through military means. And now let's finally get to creature management. There's quite a bit for me to talk about, so strap in folks, because this may be a long one. As mentioned prior, Land 3 is really when you finally get any semblance of control over your creature. At first, your creature starts out pretty small, but is still far larger than the average villager. From here, it's up to you how you want to craft your creature. It can be a peace-loving entertainer that just wants to have a good time and dance with villagers, or it can be a titan of power and destruction. Depending on the alignment, will also change the way the character looks, similar to games like Fable. For every action that it attempts to do, you can either encourage or discourage your creature from performing said action. For example, if he decides to pick up a tree and curl it to gain his strength, I will encourage it by petting him. If he does something I don't want him to do, like eat one of my villagers, I will slap him silly. Considering you can actually beat your creature to death, I would recommend you to just get your message across and move on to the next task. Compared to the first game, it's much easier to know what exactly you are encouraging and discouraging, which is much appreciated. New to this game are the creature roles. The standard leash is known as free will, but the other leashes you can use are builder, entertainer, gatherer, and soldier. Each role gives a boost to that occupation when equipped, such as increasing damage and health when using the soldier leash. These roles can also be leveled up via spending tribute. The only potential downside when using creature roles is how it will decrease the creature's amount of free will. If you would rather have the creature take actions on its own like I do, it's best to only use these roles when needed. And honestly, that's my favorite thing about raising a creature in either game. Sometimes I like to watch my creature figure things out as it goes across the land, either looking for things to play with gathering resources, searching for food, or maybe eating something to poop on. I'm always amazed watching the creature AI at work, figuring out what to do next and using your discipline as a guideline. Without really giving any encouragement at all, I found my line being the entertaining type, often being found dancing with villagers or even petting them on occasion. As mentioned prior, you can purchase miracles for you to cast as well as for your creature to do so. You will need a certain amount of worship points to cast the miracle, while your creature just performs it. Your creature is only limited to 4 miracles at a time though, which is a bit of a shame considering the number was limitless in the original. For this playthrough, I gave him the lightning miracle, which made him electrocute enemy soldiers in mass. It was deadly effective, although the effect was so grand that my own troops would often get caught in the chaos. If you're feeling frisky with your creatures, you can take it to combat other creatures. Unfortunately, this is completely automated unlike the first game, so you have no control on the overall outcome. However, most creatures you face in the game will not be as strong, especially if you've been conditioning your creature properly. I have made it curl trees and rocks, so I was confident it would make short work of this wolf on land 4. While I am disappointed that you can't give it any commands, it's still a pretty cool spectacle seeing your creature go to work on the enemy. And once you leave land 3, now you're left to fend for yourself with a bit of advice given from time to time. The gameplay loop from here on out involves either taking over towns with your army and creature, or impressing them by growing your town. Each land will feature its own set of scrolls, which represent either additional tutorials or side quests. This is when you'll start noticing some issues with this game. For one, the AI is way too passive, especially for land 5. Throughout each land, you'll hear how the enemy is planning for an invasion and you should get ready. In land 4, all the Norse did was hang out outside my walls and wait for me to open the gate, and even then my creature made short work of them thanks to the lightning miracle I gave to him. In land 5, you start with a group of 50 archers. I figured this is because the Japanese are going to attack you very shortly, but it never happened at all. Even though I purposefully left an opening, my city was never attacked and the archers just ate most of my grain supply. The second is just how plain repetitive the loop gets. Sure, the first game was crazy unpolished after you left land 2, but it was far more experimental in the challenges you had to face. For here, as long as you have an adequate supply of food and other resources, you can easily win through impressing other villages. I think it just comes down to the fact that this game is a bit too easy compared to the original. Sure, Black and White 1 was overly difficult and ridiculous by the end, but at least it made for a more unique experience. Each land had something that made you remember it outside of the random Norse/Japanese/Egyptian/Aztec land. One of the biggest issues with the first game is the lack of replay value, and sadly, there is even less so here. What helped to add additional hours in the first game was the skirmish mode and the multiplayer mode. This allowed for players to take their creatures in different situations and duke it out with either the AI or other people. Unfortunately, there is just no way to make that happen anymore. The lack of multiplayer especially is one of the biggest omissions considering where gaming was headed at the time. Even prior Molyneux titles such as Dungeon Keeper 2 from 1999 had multiplayer. This seems like a huge omission, and the fact that it wasn't patched in nor added in the expansion pack is disappointing. So now that we've talked about the main game in length, we can talk about the expansion pack. This pack provides a new campaign which takes place after the events of the main game. You can import your creature from the main campaign or start over fresh entirely. We get quite a few new miracles and buildings to play with, but only one new creature in the turtle. Considering how many creatures were in the first game, it's a shame this wasn't used to bring back more such as the horse and the rhino. Considering how detailed the models are in this game, I assume it wasn't done due to budget and time reasons. I'll make this one quick here. This has to be one of the most disappointing expansion packs that I've ever played. Outside of just adding more of the same, there were so many directions this pack could have gone to. Heck, this would have been a great opportunity to introduce some multiplayer or some sort of skirmish mode, or even go wild and create some sort of sandbox mode. Instead, it's just more of the same with a slight twist of facing an actual god this time around. And at the end of the day, I'm just quite sad and exhausted when I talk about Black and White 2. It's definitely a good game, but it feels overall lacking compared to its predecessor. While there are many steps taken back regarding the lack of replay value and overall repetitive nature of each land, I still appreciate the still impressive visuals, the improvements to town management, and the introduction of a military system. Regardless, I can't help but think that a third title would have had the opportunity to combine the strengths of both games into one awesome experience. Lionhead Studios instead got relegated to Fable Hell, which while it did bring them success, it ended up being their downfall. Now that, my friends, is a story for another time. Thank you for watching as always, and this is Powerhouse, signing off.